Born in Blood by COVID Candy. Chapter 161 Search. Hearing Lorcan's words, the two instantly raised a brow. They simultaneously began examining Liam's body, realizing with shock what searching I meant. The exterior of the body did not match the dried interior. The face and body imitation pill. I've dealt with this many times before, Lorcan uttered casually, putting both his palms on the dried corpse. Although the duration of the pill is not long, if the user dies during the process, their image won't change even after death. Aura gathered on his hands and gradually peeled away the dried skin, revealing the corpse's true identity as the servant who had gone missing. Edwin and Ken grimaced at the same time. So the boy is still alive, Edwin thought with furrowed brows. Was he the one who did this by himself? Or did Ken's son kidnap him? Or were they both working together? Lorcan took a good look at the servant's corpse, peering down his throat and into his abdomen, then shot a look towards the clan patriarchs. I will need a full rundown of who this Liam interacted with, and what his usual schedule was. We cannot throw away any possibility, he asked Edwin, who nodded firmly in response. Also, please tell me more about this blood demon person, he asked Ken, and the three began to speak. /////. In a certain forgery in Ucladd's underground, Lloyd and Rogan were playing a game of cards. Although merely a year passed, the two looked aged. Even Rogan's spiked hair didn't stay up anymore, drooping down over his face. 3 of apples paired with an ace of fruits. I win again, Lloyd guffawed and took away the pile of aura stones on the table, storing it away. Rogan shook his head. This game sucks. Lloyd tooted. You suck, he laughed. Rogan sighed. Before he could respond, 3 figures arrived at the forgery doors and entered. Realizing who they were, Lloyd and Rogan reeled in shock. What were 3 zeniths doing in their forgery? You are the boys' masters, are you not? Lorcan addressed with a friendly smile. Lloyd remained silent under the 3 piercing gazes. Pressure grew in the room, making both him and Rogan wince and sweat. It wasn't too heavy. More of an indication that their life was at the 3 zeniths' fingertips. We were. Is he not dead now? Lloyd broke the silence. Lorcan hummed to himself, his gaze distant. Apparently not. What? Both Rogan and Lloyd exclaimed at the same time. He's alive? Searching I paused, then nodded. He isn't dead, not that we know of, at least. Tell us about this boy and his personality. Although you're obliged to do so anyway, we will give you both 10,000 stones as a reward. Silence. Lloyd glanced at Rogan from the side. Rogan did the same with a knowing grin. All of a sudden, they burst into laughter. Can you imagine? Lloyd wheezed, ignoring the zenith. This is the second time, too. Rogan couldn't stop his guffaw. And he did it right after taking the rewards. Even myths can't make up something so ridiculous. The 3 zeniths frowned. Pressure steadily mounted and made the surroundings shake. Did you not hear what he said? Ken said with an even voice and a chilling tone. Tell us about the boy. Despite the growing pain on their weary mental spheres, the two laughed crazily for a good few minutes. Slowly, Lloyd's laughter came to a stop, then he gave Lorcan, Edwin, and Ken a mocking look. You're telling me 3 zeniths need the help of these 2 lowly cultivators, to find a little boy? Silence descended upon the group. Awkward and tense at the same time. Edwin clenched his fists in frustration. Ken's eyes were like piercing knives, and Lorcan simply gave the 2 a probing gaze. That kid has escaped death more times than you can count. He will reach the celestial ranks. You old coots better die before he reaches you. Lloyd broke the silence with an insult and a grin. His fate was sealed. Any held-back pressure on his mind began to unload, like an elephant slowly stepping on a bug. Lloyd lowered his head and solemnly closed his eyes. Cracks were rapidly spreading across his mental sphere, but he felt strangely at peace. I never gave him a moniker, did I? He squeezed in a thought amidst the mind-numbing pain. Oh well. He'll gain plenty throughout his life. Be well, my disciple. Crack. Lloyd thumped limp on the ground, his eyes open but devoid of life. He died with a grin on his peaceful face. Rogan gave his friend a pitiful look. The pressure wasn't directed at him and he watched Lloyd die. You can choose to live, or follow his footsteps, Searching Eye threatened impatiently. Rogan pursed his lips in deep thought. The silence was deafening, and the zeniths were getting annoyed. Nah. I'm good. You three can suck my filthy, soot-covered toes. My flame has puffed out anyway, his is still raging. Lorcan shook his head and turned around to leave, but not before shattering Rogan's mental sphere. The blacksmith thumped down beside Lloyd, a similar smile on his face. What a pointless waste of time. .. Searching Eye had spent months looking over the forest near the stadium and Ucladd. Thanks to his spells and investigative methods, he found an alarming piece of evidence, an abandoned hideout within a mountain cavity, but without any Revel or Liam of the sort. It turned out, they really didn't need to question Liam's teachers. Lisa and Adrian Royce gladly spoke about the boy, including his cold and hard-working personality. Still, the case was difficult to deal with. Lorcan still didn't know whether it was just one or two of them. The blade used was the blood demon's, but the peasant's body was fake. Unless, did they know each other somehow? He spent another 2 months investigating the surrounding cities, but his search didn't yield any fruit. As Searching Eye thought of a motive, a sudden light flickered on in his head. The academy. Till now, he had only considered revenge. He didn't see any other reasonable clue why the attack could happen. The killings were too vicious and grim for something like that. The kid thought this far. Abruptly, Edwin and Ken chose that exact moment to appear. Edwin looked grim and silently enraged. There's been word of a darkness cultivator inside the Royal Academy. Chapter 162 gone. Are you sure it's him? Searching Eye questioned with a frown. Edwin paused. How his grandson escaped from his grasp and became a member of the academy actually made him respect the boy. But that wouldn't stop him from breaking his bones for doing so. Word is he has no familial backing, and is also young and talented. There's no doubt about it. Silence. This got difficult, Lorcan professed. It was one thing for Liam to be hiding in some random city as a fugitive. It was another for him to be under the royals. Still, a fugitive was a fugitive. They had grounds and authority to bring a killer to justice. However, the patriarch of the Ken family had other plans. To have his name dragged through the mud by a peasant was a death sentence he would execute personally, no matter the cost. No reason to linger then. The three began to shoot towards Rozon with jet-like speed, turning into streaks. The capital was at least 2 months away from Ucladd, but that wasn't applicable to zeniths. They arrived in 3 hours. Rozon was vast, the thick, inscribed borders alone were nearly 300 meters tall. There were golden towers and skyscrapers everywhere one looked, and only the top potentates of the country could afford to live in such a luxurious area. The 3 zeniths lingered outside the borders. They couldn't just enter willy-nilly. Even they, as powerful patriarchs, couldn't afford to offend royalty. Instead, they waited outside for someone to eventually accommodate them. As they waited, a distant figure rapidly approached from the side, sonic booms causing the air tremble at his flight. For a moment, the trio thought that was a royal, but he didn't come from the city. As he got closer, the 3 instantly realized who the man was. Nature's Hand, Benedict voiced. An esteemed expert who specialized in alchemy and botany, and one of the largest potentates of Ikoria. He was a silver-haired, lanky, tall middle-aged man donning an azure robe embroidered with various flowery patterns. A deep frown scrunched his sharp features. Spotting the trio, Benedict looked confused, then made a beeline towards them. Edwin, Searching Eye, and Ken paid their respects as he approached. Nature's Hand was a hard man to reach, and his expertise in creating pills was useful even for zenith-ranked cultivators. Why have you all gathered here? Benedict questioned, confusion mixed with anger in his tone. 2 years ago, a commoner murdered 3 noble heirs before escaping to the academy. Lorcan was the first to respond. He is now a student. Benedict frowned deeply. The Thyras family has gotten too lax, accepting peasants and commoners was always a flaw in their reasoning, yet they never attempted to fix it. Even my own grandson was mutilated by one of them. A darkness cultivator, they said. Benedict spat in anger, crossing his arms as he looked towards the royal city. It's about time things changed around here. An awkward silence took over the air. We're searching for the same person, then, searching, I confessed. Benedict's eyes widened in shock. Perhaps if you join us, our chances of resolution could improve. Benedict paused, then nodded firmly. A few minutes later, a royal met them at the city gates. Almost all royals were women, and they all shared the same beauty: silver hair, golden eyes, red lips, and pale skin, paired with their aureate silver robes. This particular one wasn't a zenith by any means, yet the rank 4 cultivators didn't offend her. The fact that she could fly meant she was nearing that realm, and zenith-ranked royals were monstrous. We pay respects to their majesty. The 4 made the Icorian gesture for respect, receiving a nod and a wave in response. I hope there is a good reason for this unscheduled visit. Our forces are a bit busy as of now, the royal, known as Caris Thyras, mentioned with a slightly worried look. Please, Ken smiled in reassurance. We would not have bothered you unless it was. We're searching for a student of the darkness element. We have proof he has murdered 3 noble heirs and escaped from his hometown. If you'd like, we can show you the corpses. Strangely, the royal raised a hand, stopping him. The 4 looked taken aback, but Caris looked grave. Does this boy have one golden-colored eye and blonde hair? Edwin looked alarmed, but nodded profusely. Caris sighed, inwardly cursing. Our forces have already been trying to locate him since 2 weeks ago. What? He's missing. / The search for Liam began precisely 2.5 weeks ago. At first, there was nothing out of the ordinary. The classes were on break, and there was at least an entire month before they resumed. Knowing Lawrence's personality, there was nothing strange about him staying in complete isolation. The only proof that he even lived in that mansion were the various sounds that resounded from within it. Soon enough, a month passed. By then, the headmaster and Liam's professors grew concerned. Liam wasn't answering his token and refused to meet with any of his teachers. There was utter silence from him. At that point, the headmaster allowed himself to enter the house, and was shocked to find Rin and Nord there instead. Weren't you two on a mission? The headmaster asked them. Nord and Rin looked confused. What are you talking about? Ryorn's chest sank. Your tokens. Show me your tokens. Nord took out his and gave it to the headmaster, only for the latter to realize it wasn't his token, but Lawrence's. Rin patted down her pockets but looked genuinely confused. It's not with me? I was sure it was, she gestured with panic. After a stern questioning, the headmaster's interrogation was fruitless. The two genuinely looked confused and oblivious. They mentioned how Liam paid them 10,000 stones just for them to skip a few classes, and they didn't see a reason to disagree. Cursing, the headmaster instantly alerted Kalia, who quickly gathered all the academy professors and organized a large search party that scattered across Icorian. // Janice, along with a large gathering of professors, filled the bullet train. She had been designated an area to hunt for Lawrence Liam Royce, but she had no intention of going there. I have a feeling I know where he is. Chapter 163 Despair. An unkempt, filthy, short figure dashed across a foggy canyon and leaped over to the other side with a powerful jump. If there was something Liam was exceptionally good at, it was running, and he hadn't stopped throughout the entire 2 months since getting off the bullet train. He used the most direct path towards the northwestern borders of Ikoria, uncaring of the magical beasts and human threats that lay there. At the same time, he didn't bother being discreet about it. The royal army would catch up anyways. The best thing to do was board and ship and leave Ikoria once and for all. He had prepared well for the occasion, buying stamina, mental energy, and strength restoration pills beforehand. I should be getting chased by now, Liam assessed, popping another pill that helped heal his ghostly complex. His hands and legs turned to mist now and again, bolstering his speed. All the while, his feet would tighten with darkness and spring him forward. At my current speed, it will take just 3 weeks to reach Revel's marker. I'm very close. Although the train did most of the work, Liam still had to traverse the rest of the distance himself. The train didn't allow entry to areas that neared Ikoria's borders. That required permission, which Liam obviously couldn't ask for. He had put aside all aspects of cultivation or rest to reach that goal. Still, he couldn't help but feel unnerved. A week passed, and his journey continued relatively safely. His stomach growled with anger and his body was drained of strength, but he suppressed those feelings and continued. Another week passed, and there was still no issue. Liam's worry gradually lessened, but he wasn't deluded by that. The surroundings switched continuously, from arid drylands to marshes and mountain peaks. On the 3rd week, the surroundings changed to a lush forest. A canopy blocked any sunlight from piercing through. There'll just be the sea after this point. I'll find the organization there, Liam smiled. Abruptly, Liam's chest sank to his gut. As he ran and looked over his shoulder, a habit he had developed throughout his journey, his golden eye constricted as he saw a figure trailing him through the dense forest. Liam cursed and tore through the air with even faster speed. The figure's presence was utterly silent, meaning they were capable of masking it from a rank 2 magus. Looking over his shoulder, the figure was closer, enough for Liam to assess her features. It was Janice. She had a grave expression on her face as she followed Liam. A mix of regret, anger, pity, and thrill all at the same time. You should have played your cards right, she shouted from behind, an inscribed spear clutched in her hands. I could have trained you to become my equal. Grimacing, Liam didn't respond as he ran, but it was clear the professor was going to catch up soon. Not only that, Liam's senses picked up on a distant group behind her, roughly a dozen whose strength matched his. Swoosh! A needle-thin bullet of liquid shot from behind and grazed Liam's thigh, spraying blood over the ground. Before he could even grunt in pain, another barrage of them followed, but he managed to evade them by using the terrain to his advantage. Damn it! She's a complete rank 3 cultivator. I can't do anything to her. Bush! A giant stream of water broke through the tree-line and smashed against Liam's shoulder, strengthened by obsidian skin and cartilage brace, as he attempted to evade. The speed that the spell was activated was too fast and too strong for Liam to properly dodge against, resulting in a chunk of missing flesh on his right shoulder. Having experienced that pain before, Liam managed to grit his teeth and continue running, but his strength was readily being sapped. Liam stilled his anxious thoughts and used everything at his disposal, conjuring a ball of chaos the size of his fist and hurling it precisely at Janice's figure. Boom! Liam looked over his shoulder as the blast went off. The shockwave was followed by a short silence, followed by Janice cutting through the cloud of dust generated from the explosion. Liam unsheathed his blades and struck them against her spear. Cling! Instantaneously, another barrage of attacks followed. There was a reason Janice was the battle professor. Each of her attacks precisely struck Liam's weak points, taking advantage of the length of her spear and superior cultivation. Entire chunks of Liam's flesh started to fly off his body. Having no choice, Liam activated the first form of his martial art. His blades turned invisible as he weaved in and grazed Janice's waist, but the latter brushed it off. Pressure mounted against Liam's mind, which forced him to use Thicken to defend against. Liam let loose every spell at his disposal, yet the mental attacks were simply slapped away. Janice simply severed the dark chains from ensnaring her, but that allowed Liam to get close for the surging burst spell. Boom! Liam felt his fist smash against a thick membrane of water, absorbing the brunt of the attack and nullifying it. Janice blurred, turning into a thin streak that reappeared behind him. Strangely enough, her back was to him, yet she didn't feel the need to turn around. Time slowed down. There was only silence. Liam's eye slowly moved to his right arm, pangs of pain shooting through his body from it. There was no arm. Liam's arm was severed clean off, twirling through the air. Only blood and split bone was visible on his shoulder, spraying endless amounts of red liquid. Liam had to stop running. A solemn emotion filled his eye as he felt death nearer than ever. Janice blurred again, reappearing below him and kicking his body upward in one fluid motion and sending it flying above. CRCK. Liam felt parts of his chest crack, his lungs devoid of any air. His consciousness was swaying left and right, dangling like a loose thread as he ascended through the air. So close. So damn close. The regret that washed over him felt worse than any pain he was going through. It was like a knife stabbing his heart repeatedly, then twisting and digging further. Such a small setback makes you despair. To think I called you determined. Chapter 164 Worthy. Liam jolted upright, as though he had awoken from a horrible dream, breathing raggedly and sweating all over. He found himself amidst a shadowy domain, with umbral darkness neither his king's eye nor senses could pierce through. The floor beneath him was a viscous red liquid, rippling with the slightest movement. Liam looked at his right arm. It was gone, but there was no pain or blood. Just a phantom limb that he couldn't control or move. It was no dream. Another assessing look over his marred body revealed the missing chunks of flesh. Liam was in a much worse state than he realized. Would you have liked it to be a dream? Rast's mocking voice rang out amidst the darkness. It was still terrifying and deep as ever. Liam grimaced, but any fear he might have had was drowned out by the bitter taste of defeat. He felt anger at himself, for embracing death, at the cards he was dealt with, and how he was merely inches away from getting away. You sure talk big for someone hiding in my head. Is a voice all you have? He countered, standing up and facing the voice. A guttural laugh. No longer afraid, good. This will be easier, then. Liam remained silent as a silhouette emerged from amidst the darkness. A frame grew visible, only he couldn't properly assess it. Drip, drip, drip. Each of the footsteps were wet and heavy, violently rippling the liquid floor. Liam watched as the figure took its time leaving the shadows and slowly coming into view. As it did, Liam realized he was looking at a waist. A slightly tanned, muscular waist, decorated with countless ornate patterns that were etched into it like ancient armor. The lower body was covered by several layers of loose red and black cloth, covering it from view. Liam's neck slowly creaked upwards, following the patterns up to the chest, where the same intricate designs continued and spread out, reaching the shoulders and continuing towards the arms. All 6 of them. The arms had an alloy sheen of their own, riddled with drawings and ancient writings. Gauntlets that radiated regality and power without looking bulky or unpleasing to the eye. Finally, Liam moved to the face. It was square-shaped and sturdy, ornate designs connected to the tanned lips, cheekbones, and scalp. Human-like, if one could call it that, except there were no irises within the glowing white eyes. The eyebrows were of a similar color, thin and saber-shaped, paired with long and wild silver hair flowing behind his back. Overall, the Ashura was at least 3 meters tall. Liam didn't know what emotion to express first. His mind spiraled into a chaotic mix of shock, confusion, and bewilderment, resulting in a dumbfounded expression. There was utter silence for a good few minutes. Liam couldn't make heads and tails of the situation. Why was there an Ashura in his mind? Was it psychosis from nearing death? Or was he already dead? Rast stared amusingly at Liam's shocked face. His lips curled to a smile, which revealed a precise row of sharp, palisade teeth, sharper than any blade or knife Liam had wielded. Liam's shock turned into a grimace. He suppressed any unstable emotion and steadied himself. There were a million questions to ask, but he remained silent until Rast eventually explained. The rest could not handle the sight of me. That's why I took my time with you. I couldn't risk losing a potential heir. The rest? Heir? Everything was moving too fast. Liam's mind spun. You are not the first I have visited. What you're seeing is simply a rendition of my consciousness and body, made by the original Rast and sent throughout the realms. The original Rast is already dead. Rast's face slowly morphed into quiet rage on the last line. The shadows surrounding Liam started to shake and churn. Harrowed shrieks rang out in the background. The air grew suffocatingly heavy. Suppressing his fear took much more effort compared to before, but Liam somehow managed. Slowly, those effects simmered down, and Liam could breathe again. His mouth opened to ask away, but the rendition's words stopped him. Any questions you have regarding the war, or how I got to you, save them. This rendition has forgotten nearly everything. I spent millennia trying to find someone worthy, pulling them out of their realms with only this spirit intact. Liam's eye widened. Realms? Rast pulled him into the world of cultivation? Lower humans are fragile, Rast interrupted his line of thought. I wouldn't have chosen them if I had a choice. None of them were hungry. They settled for lower forms of power and took the easy paths. Everyone I hosted died after a few years, forgotten by the world. They were weak. Rast looked over at Liam with a complicated glimmer in his bright white eyes. You are different. Driven. Hungry. Angry. Rast paused. Worthy. Liam remained silent. A compliment coming from an Ashura was a strange thing to experience, yet the questions left unanswered clawed at the back of his mind. Worthy of what? Rast smiled cryptically. My inheritance. Liam's scowl slightly softened, yet inwardly, his brain was shooting in 100 different directions. What exactly can you give me? A chance to survive. Liam grumbled. He was stuck between a rock and a hard place. You want something in return? Rast scoffed derisively. Of course. The air got heavy again. This power was the reason the war started, coveted by all the races. I can still remember that despite the holes in my memory. Liam frowned. Slowly, the air got back to normal. Tell me how you can help first, Liam settled on asking. Rast grew stern. The chaos in your body. Its true name is primordial essence, and your body will soon shatter under its power. It's too strong for normal humans to wield. Liam's face turned dark. He clicked his tongue. And you can help me how, exactly? All I can give you is the chance to become an Ashura yourself. You will lose the ability to reproduce due to the opposition's influence, and there's a slight chance it won't work due to your human bloodline. But if it succeeds, you will be limitless. Liam remained silent. He was going to be killed shortly. He was backed into a corner, and of all things, an Ashura came to his aid. Tell me the condition. Chapter 165 Fear. The reproduction aspect of the deal didn't bother Liam much. Courting women hadn't been in his plans, let alone having offspring. Rast's glowing eyes stuck to his own. A hint of a smile appeared on his thin lips. Find my people and help them. You'll find acceptance from the Ashura so long as they know you're my heir, but you might face a bit of difficulty at first. Find them how? Liam asked. And what do you mean by difficulty? Rast's rendition gave another smug smile. That's for you to find out, isn't it? Liam was getting pissed. Still, he had more questions. He opened his mouth to voice them, but tremors ran through the surroundings and stopped him. I've spoken for too long, Rast grimaced, staring at the shadows. He shifted his attention to Liam. The opposition is realizing something's wrong. Your path will become infinitely more difficult now, even if you live through this by chance. Your abilities will be incomplete, but it's up to you to improve them. Rast's tone was solemn. Liam was stunned still. The space was going to collapse at any time now. Liam Royce. I come to you not as an Ashura, but as a forgotten race. Cracks spread across the air and started to weigh against Liam's mind. Become strong. Ravage this planet. Take what's rightfully yours. Only through power can you seize glory from their grasp. On those words, the entire domain of shadows had shattered. Liam felt his consciousness yanked back inside his body. The pain returned, along with every other unpleasant sensation. He was still in the air with a swaying consciousness, only he was much more aware. An abrupt heat shot through his body, starting from his solar plexus. His entire body started to rise in temperature, while his core contents were spiraling uncontrollably. Chaotic energies, now known as primordial essence, burst forth from his core and ravaged his muscles. His organs, skin, and any other body part wasn't spared either. It felt as though his entire body was being restructured and reformed. Liam's consciousness wanted to switch off to avoid feeling the cruel pain. Every time he felt like he would never experience a worse kind of agony, Liam ate his words. From having his insides scalded, yanking out his eyeballs, having his mental sphere boiled, having his blood forcibly purified, his current predicament took the cake. Worst of all, he could feel every individual piece of muscle, bone and organ in his body, with the exception of the king's iron core, as it tore itself apart and began to reform, repeating the cycle over and over. Liam couldn't even scream as his throat and mouth were being restructured too. Even an eye began to fill in his empty eye socket. Janice, along with everyone else that arrived at the scene, watched with horror as Liam's body began to pulse with bright rays of crimson light. She felt the hair on her skin rise, warning her of the imminent danger. She attempted to end the boy's life then and there, but as she barely got a step closer, the chaotic rays violently pulsed. Boom! Janice was instantly blown away by the shockwave, coating her body with a membrane of viscous water to avoid being turned to mush. Following the bright explosion, trees and surrounding terrain began to splinter and crack, eventually eviscerating. As Janice was hurled the distance, those arriving at the scene instantly recoiled and leaped back to avoid the abrupt attack. Unfortunately, a few were caught out, parts of them maimed due to the explosion's power. From the above view, it looked as though a meteor smashed against the forest, forming a giant crater. In the center of it all, something continuously pulsed with chaotic red light, digging further into the ground. More booms rang out, consuming chunks of the earth. Janice managed to steady herself back on her feet at that point, watching with shock and horror at the scene ahead. Her cohort did the same, oblivious to what exactly was going on. Eventually, the thunderous booms came to an abrupt stop, but pieces of jagged rock shot out in all directions, forcing them to take cover. Immediately, the hair on Janice's skin rose. There was complete silence, but nobody dared to move. Fear. Suddenly, it felt like they had become prey. Janice's first instinct, along with everyone else's, was to run away without looking back. And usually, her instincts were on point. But all there was to it was fear. There was nothing else holding her down. No pressure whatsoever. Slowly, the clouds of smoke settled. In the center of the distant crater, a figure grew visible. The source of that fear. Liam let out a long sigh that sounded more like a hiss. His voice had gotten deeper, raspier and louder. His face and eyes looked utterly apathetic as he let out all the air in his lungs. One of his eyes was golden, and the other a scarlet red, both emitting faint glows. The first thing Liam did was inspect his body. His new eye didn't have any new abilities, that he knew of course. There were no clothes covering his figure, revealing his pale skin, now etched with the same ancient designs that Rast's body came with. They ran across the bottom of his feet, all the way to his scalp. Funny enough, his male reproductive organ disappeared, leaving his groin featureless. His blonde hair was now pure white, containing a regal silver sheen and silent luster, almost touching the floor. Liam then moved his arms. All 6 of them. Each of his arms were coated in a dense alloy, a mix of gold and copper, that was built into his skin. Controlling them was instinctive. He clenched his fists, spread and waved his 6 arms in different directions. Within his body itself, there were new additions, with his bones strengthened exponentially, thickened and dense-kned. His chaos felt more docile and controllable compared to before, now attuned with his Ashura body. And best of all, the massive amount of physical strength churning within him was explosive. However, he couldn't comfortably assess the changes, sensing the pairs of eyes converging on his figure. Liam's multicolored eyes slowly shifted to dread-faced Janice standing a short distance away. With a lithe stomp, Liam's foot tapped against the earth. The ground shattered like glass. Chapter 166 Ravenous. Liam didn't think he used much force to shoot forward. Still, the crater Liam was standing on a second ago was now covered with cracks, while his six-armed form blurred toward Janice incredibly fast. A little too fast. Liam had clenched three of his right arms and attempted to punch the battle professor, yet couldn't ready them in time for a proper strike. Instead, he awkwardly shoulder-slammed Janice away with just his body. Boom. The battle professor's reaction was late, but Liam's lack of control over his speed allowed her to evade and react appropriately before suffering the full brunt. Still, her inscribed spear, now broken in half, did little against Liam's incredibly hardened skin, sending her hurling across the tree-line. As she bounced between the trees like a ping-pong ball, Liam momentarily paused. Within his solar plexus, chaos rapidly churned around a pearl-like organ, heavily protected by Liam's chest dense plates. Unlike the core, the walls of the pearl weren't soft, and were made from the same material as Liam's gauntlets. Thankfully, Liam's core and mental sphere seemed to be intact, only all the chaos inside it had been completely transferred to the pearl. Still, his mind was still a bit groggy after experiencing so much pain and sudden changes in his body. He tried willing out some darkness, but found it a bit difficult to do so. Liam's control over the pearl was a bit weak, but he felt as though he could strengthen parts of his body with the chaos. A feature he previously didn't have. At the same time, Liam realized something else. The pearl was responsible for dividing chaos throughout his body. That was the source of all his physical strength, since it was constantly doing so to keep his six-armed form together. That meant he couldn't hold his Ashura form together forever. Liam didn't know how, but he could possibly revert to a semi-human state. This had its own advantages. Liam couldn't go around looking like a demon, attracting attention and making enemies everywhere he went. Not to mention, he could never hide his identity. Although the golden and crimson eye would give it away, as long as he did a good job keeping a low profile, not many would recognize him. Thus, it was good that his six-armed form had a switch. However, this meant the physical strength churning throughout his body was not permanent. An acceptable outcome. It didn't end there. Liam felt bestial. Bloodthirsty. Ravenous. Like he wanted to roar and rip into flesh. Those feelings tugged at his common sense, but he suppressed them the best he could. I'm on a timer. I have to end them now. Liam's multicolored eyes shifted between Janice and the rest. The battle professor had steadied her footing by then, but had no visible injuries. She had a rank 4 body, after all, and countless spells to boot. The rest were on the opposite side of the crater, readily making their way closer to him. There were 13 cultivators, with most having a rank 2 sea of consciousness, rank 3 bodies and varying cores. Their bravery of running straight into the battle was commendable, but idiotic. Liam's attention went back to Janice. Before they gained power through numbers, and he lost his Ashura form, Liam decided to eliminate the biggest threat. Liam coiled his knees. They slowly creaked and tightened. The sound produced was like hardened metal bending by force. Liam let loose. The ground below wasn't strong enough to bear Liam's stomp. It burst into fragments and sent him flying through the air like a loose bullet aiming straight for Janice. The professor was prepared, still suffering from shock and utter confusion, yet that did little against the sheer speed of Liam's approach. She attempted to slow down Liam's launch by shooting another condensed beam of liquid straight at him. Liam stretched his arms forward and began tearing through the stream of water. It slowed down his speed, but allowed him to come face to face with Janice. With a grin revealing his palisade-like teeth, Liam's 3 fists clenched, surging with chaotic energy. A second later, his gauntlet struck Janice's cheek, rib and waist at the same time. The professor's form started to liquidize, but before she could fully transform her bodily state, the attacks landed anyway. Parts of her slightly cracked. cheekbones, ribs, and hip, forcing her to wince in pain and cough a bit of blood. At the same time, her liver was crushed by the impact. Janice was sent flying once more, but Liam wasn't kind enough to give her respite like before. He shot forward, following her trajectory and leaving behind shattered earth. As he got closer, Liam quickly sensed Janice's attempt to pressure his mind with her superior consciousness. Although the mental waves weighing against his mental sphere were strong, it was bearable by his standards. He simply gritted his teeth. Although Janice was a rank 3 magus, the pressure was more similar to a rank 2's capability, albeit stronger. Liam didn't wait for her to catch her footing, he towered above her and swiftly smashed all 6 of his arms on her stomach. The force was just too much. Although her rank 4 body held strong, the insides were severely damaged. Janice couldn't effectively defend herself from the blow, and the fist smashed full force against her solar plexus, vacuuming the air from her lungs and cracking the weakened ribs. With a suppressed grunt of pain, she smashed limp against the rocky terrain, her body marred with bruises and damaged internals. Liam was upon her again. "What, are you?" Janice wheezed with a drooping eye as Liam towered over her limp body. His gold and red irises emitted an inhuman coldness. Liam said nothing and picked Janice up by the neck with one arm. By then, the remaining cultivators had arrived at the scene, staring in horror as their strongest was utterly broken, held by a 6-armed creature they thought went extinct. As they prepared their most destructive and powerful spells, Liam pulled at Janice's neck with all of his arms. Her rank 4 body was stubborn, but weakened considerably. Paired with strengthening chaos, the skin on the professor's neck slowly started to rip and tear apart. Layers of flesh started to separate. Like plucking a grape off its stem, Janice's head was torn from her shoulders. Chapter 167 Carnage. Witnessing the grim scene, the cultivators surrounding Liam instantly fired every spell and technique they could muster. Showers of every element rained down upon Liam. Using Janice's corpse as a shield, he blocked most of the direct attacks that would have damaged his body. Although Liam's new physique defied common sense, he didn't want to test his luck. In the first place, he was rapidly running out of chaos, and the bloodthirsty emotions were starting to gnaw away at his common sense. Entire chunks of earth slammed at him through Janice's body. The force made him skitter backwards as he held his ground, his feet digging into the earth below. Bursts of liquid shot through Janice's skin, but lacked the power to pierce through the other side. Gusts of wind weakened Janice's already desecrated corpse, hacking away at her flesh. Waves of fire burned away and cooked Janice's skin, rendering her shielding capabilities null. The sound of glass breaking sounded beside Liam's ears, and a mix of flames and fumes enshrouded him, entering through his nostrils and dulling his senses. 3 entire minutes passed of constant spells and chemical weapons being used. Eventually, the cultivators stopped to see the result of their barrage. Smoke, fire, water, and scattered shards of stone spread throughout the area. Silence ensued. Roar. A guttural roar tore through the air and instantly cleared away the smoke. The sound waves directly popped some of the academic guards' ears, unable to strengthen their consciousness in time. A few wounds marred Liam's body. Slight burn marks that browned his hardened skin and small cuts that tore through his hardened skin. Instead of leaking red, however, Liam's blood was pure white. Strange. What worried the cultivators the most was the wrath they saw on Liam's face. He loudly panted like a wild animal, his teeth bared and dripping spit. Janice, on the other hand, looked like a lump of flesh with no distinctive feature linking to a human being, but her allies couldn't care less about her anymore. Call for reinforcing dash. Liam blurred as he reappeared towards the cultivator speaking. His gauntlets pierced into the man's chest and pulled it apart from the inside, spraying blood and bone. As the man was split into 6 sections, Liam's bloodthirsty gaze shifted to the next. With another deafening roar, he leaped at the closest person and began tearing him apart. The humans rightfully panicked. Their most powerful spells took time to prepare, and their weapons didn't do jack against the Ashura's powerful body. Somehow, it focused down on those trying to run away, and others that tried using their jades to call for support. Liam was ripping them apart one by one with his bare hands. Other times, he was biting away limbs with his powerful jaw. There was no humanity left inside that demon. Only carnage. /////. A sliver of consciousness allowed Liam to pull himself back to his senses. When he opened his eyes, he was holding a corpse in his hands, jaw broken and limbless, with their bulging eyes devoid of life. A look around made him realize similar bodies were strewn all around. Some lacked heads, others lower halves, and vice versa. The battlefield looked grim, with pieces of flesh and viscera scattered throughout. Liam began coughing violently. His entire body began to ache painfully, causing him to tremble slightly. He even coughed a mouthful of blood. Backlash, Liam cursed. When did I black out? He quickly realized he was no longer in his Ashura form. 4 of his arms had disappeared, absorbed back into his body. Still trembling with a cruel migraine, Liam took a minute to inspect the state of his body. His pale skin wasn't as hardened anymore, but he still retained some of that amazing strength. His hair went back to blonde, but now had a metallic sheen. The alloyed gauntlets weren't there either, leaving his fists bare and stained with blood, but the etched designs remained, albeit less visible. However, the pearl within his solar plexus remained. It was empty of any chaos, or primordial essence, to be precise, but it was slowly and gradually filling up. Thankfully, the inside of his mouth had gone back to normal. Ah. Even his voice wasn't as demonic, but definitely deeper. That idiot didn't even give me an explanation of my abilities. Did using my Ashura form result in me going insane? I would never have killed these people so brutally. Fast and concise was Liam's killing method. Torture was an indulgence he saved for people he truly hated. Whatever emotions he might have had were intensified by 100 when he transformed, though. Even his pride and greed, although he didn't feel like those emotions changed. So I'm a half Ashura, then? That means I have the best of both worlds, only I can access one of them at a time. Fair. Liam picked himself up. His space rings held on, as they were covered by the gauntlets themselves. I need to leave. This place looks like a war zone and I'm just a week away from the marker. Liam was buck naked. He grabbed a pair of blood-stained clothes, those that fit him at least, and put them on. At the same time, he made sure to loot every single ring he found, including Janice's. As he ran, Liam found that his speed was much faster compared to before. He also gained back the ability to use his darkness spells. So that's it then. I'm half human and half Ashura. Putting those thoughts in the back of his mind, Liam focused on getting away. His new abilities honestly made him excited for the future. There was also the strange fact of his blood being white, but he saved that for later. Much faster than he expected, Liam arrived at the marker's location in 3 days. He was in a mountainous area, covered with caverns, tunnels, dens and dungeons at every corner. Stop hiding. I'm here on the account of Revel Ovler, your leader. Silence. Who are you? A nasally voice echoed from one of the tunnels. Liam's face was stern. Your new leader. Chapter 168 Air. There was silence for a good few minutes. Eventually, groups of hooded men and women slowly exited the tunnels and surrounded Liam from all sides. They're not the strongest, Liam thought, assessing their auras with the king's eye. They'll do, though. Becoming an Ashura had no effect on his king's eye, but having another sensory organ restored his vision. Not to mention, the red iris looked horrifying, as it was both vertical and horizontal at the same time, but it took a closer inspection to see the faint difference. Where's Master Revel? A hooded man ahead, who Liam presumed was their leader, said. Liam gave him a hard look. Dead. Gasps rang out from all sides, followed by murmurs and loud curses. Some already unsheathed their weapons. What? You're lying, the man responded, taking out a longsword from his hood. Liam frowned and clicked his tongue. His sickness grew in the final stages of his life. I'm what remains of him. Liam took out Revel's token, then raised it in the air. Proof. Silence ensued. The members of the organization, which Liam didn't know the name of, didn't know how to take the news. Revel must have taken care of these guys well for them to call him Master. Liam could see the man's face through the dark hood. His expression was a mix of grief and shock, pained by the news. To further prove his case, Liam took out Revel's blood-red odachi, which caused another round of incredulous stares. "What are you to him?" the man asked with a threatening voice. Liam was getting annoyed by the venomous stares. His heir. Liam supposed acceptance would be better than a forceful takeover, but their reluctance to the news was making him impatient. He had places to be. A tense minute passed, and the man finally spoke. "Then we accept his wishes," he said, uncovering his hood and revealing his scarred features. "I'm Jargon." Jargon looked a bit over the middle-age threshold, but face held a maturity beyond his years. His features were weary, dark eyes that no doubt saw the pits of despair, short black hair, with tanned skin and a long scar that ran horizontally across his forehead. The others followed suit, uncovering their hoods. They looked like the dregs of society, the forgotten and despised bunch. Liam slicked his hair back. "Good. Quickly show me how things are run here. I need safe passage to another country or continent, and I need it fast." Jargon nodded firmly. "Follow me, sir. Our passages lead to the ships." Jargon entered one of the tunnels leading downwards and Liam followed closely behind him. Revel really liked building hidden bases, didn't he? Liam thought as he entered the mountain passage. It resembled Revel's hideout back in Ucladd, only much grander and vibrant. The inner passages were lit by countless bright yellow lights, connecting one passage to another. Every corner bustled with people, staring at Liam with various emotions in their eyes. "We're called the Blood Troop, and we have roughly 2,000 people with us," Jargon explained as they walked. "We're all fugitives and criminals, but Master Revel didn't see any defects in us. He gave us spells, techniques and a place to live." Liam hummed in thought. So he acted as a gracious benefactor and slowly raised his force using his wealth. "Smart. There aren't any camouflaging formations around your base." "How do you not get caught?" Liam asked. Jargon raised a brow. "Why would anyone want to come to a magical beast-infested area? Besides yourself, of course." "Fair point. The amount of magical beasts surrounding the base was much more than normal. Liam even had to kill a pack or two wolves to get through. We travel by a single ship. Towards the borders, there's a massive docking port where countless others like us travel between countries for trade and the like." "Any inspections?" Liam asked. "And how fast is your boat?" "Of course, any faster form of transportation requires money, which we don't really have much of. Our boat has a few inscriptions on it made by Revel himself, but they're not the best. There are minor inspections with distant travel, and major if there's anything suspicious," Jargon explained, rubbing the scar on his forehead. "And our documents for travel are official. Our leader made absolutely sure of it." Liam nodded to himself, satisfied. "We have to be quick. The entire country will be on the lookout for me if they aren't already." "What countries can you go to?" Jargon looked a bit worried at Liam's first point, but scratched his head and looked away. "It depends on how much money you have, and if they choose to accept you. Abyssal Plains and Corson lands are a no-go, but other countries are more lenient." Liam ran through the countries he learned about. First was Alali, containing the martial alliance towards the west. Their cultures were surreal and revolved around martial arts and sectors, even their lands were called the Gango, roughly translating to Land of Arts. Calligraphers and artists were venerated there, including those with high battle prowess. Liam weighed the other options. With the knowledge he gained through his time at the academy, he knew a good amount about the landscape of his world. In the distant north, there was the Empire of Duality, ruled by both an emperor and an empress, both of whom were rank 6 powerhouses. However, it was a known fact that the two were not on fair terms. The emperor ruled one half, and the empress ruled another. "I'm not interested in a dictatorship. I want someplace where I can freely practice my abilities without restriction." Some countries weren't dictated just by bloodline. There was the small country of Iho towards the northwest, which consisted entirely of alchemy experts. However, they only allowed in individuals that had a similar specialization. Some countries followed the same route. Countries towards the south and east were basically impossible to arrive at due to the blood troops' location, only the north, west, and the countries in between were open for travel. Weighing his options, determining each factor, Liam heaved a sigh. Alali it is, then. Chapter 169 Comfort. Liam's reasons for wanting to head to Alali varied. Firstly, the concept of nobility didn't exist within the martial alliance. Power was respected. That meant there would be no annoying nobles or royalty that would try to hinder or probe Liam's cultivation. At the same time, the sectors in that country could provide backing so long as Liam met their requirements. Not to mention, most sects had their own jurisdiction over an appointed area, depending on their strength and resources. Also, it was the nearest from the surrounding countries, which would take roughly a month or two to arrive at. The other countries all had strict systems within their civilizations. There were even other kingdoms similar to Ikoria, but what would be the point of that? Alali checks all the boxes. The only issue is finding a sect that would be willing to accept me. From what I've heard, there are unorthodox sectors that accept anyone with no questions asked, but low-level sects often get bullied by those above. Getting bullied by someone stronger was an issue no country would escape. It was the theme of the cultivation world. Liam shook his head. He was putting the cart before the horse. I need to get there first. Run there with me, I'm not patient enough to walk. Jargon looked taken aback, but nodded and ran with Liam in front of him. Are your people trustable? Liam asked in a low voice. Yes, Jargon nodded firmly. I can bet my life on it, sir. We would rather bite out our tongues than become rats. Letting out a low hum in response, Liam would hold them up to that. .. After an hour, Liam arrived at the passage's ending. It was a natural opening within the mountain that allowed for a clear view of the ocean ahead. With the daylight gone, the sea shimmered with glamorous moonlight and stars. Near the lands that connected the oceans to the seas, were a vast line of thousands of ships differing in size. Some resembled massive yachts that nobles entered through, others were kayak boats big enough for one person to fish. Besides that were small-sized establishments, tents and bases that thousands of people rested in before setting out to sea. Among those, there were noble soldiers that guarded the borders surrounding the docking ports. Liam was given a fake ID he could use, a blood troop member that had died in the past. Jargon was confused why he requested that, unaware of his illusionistic abilities. Our ship is that one, Jargon pointed to a ship in the distance. Zooming in, Liam saw that it was a regular ship, albeit large enough to hold 2,000 people, made from general wood and small writings on its bottom. Gather everyone then. We're leaving now. Jargon nodded, then turned to the surrounding blood troop members and began to firmly instruct them. Liam expected more than a few rebels against his leadership, but to his pleasant surprise, the members didn't do anything of the sort. They began to pack their provisions and stored all their items before lining up to the passage entrance, even puffing out the lights and removing any trace of their stay. They were taught well. Meanwhile, Liam was given a loose black cloak to hide his features with, and a cleaner set of covert clothes. Pretty soon, the tunnel was packed with the blood troop members, looking at their new leader with gazes of quiet anticipation. Divide yourselves into groups and enter in short intervals. Jargon has already explained everything, so I won't repeat myself. As he said those words, Liam activated the king's eye, instantly switching his appearance to the ID he was given. He didn't really feel comfortable showing his ability, but he needed the blood troop to recognize him for later. Those who saw the change felt their jaw loosen, but Liam didn't give them any reprieve. At once, he leaped out of the passage, and the divided groups followed behind him. //. Before long, Liam arrived at the borders with his own group of people. He blended in behind Jargon, who led the party, and was an expert in traveling in and out of Ikoria. It took a while for the man to calm himself down after seeing Liam's ability, but he managed. The borders were swarming with crowds of people, noble and peasant alike. Obviously, the potentates had their own gate, and Liam's group had to wait in line with the commoners. Perfect. Liam's clash with Janice and the rest happened 3 days ago. The soldiers at the gates didn't look vigilant or on edge. Even if they found the bodies, they don't know who could do such a thing. I'm still a weak student in their eyes, and the crater is bound to make them ask questions. Jargon's turn eventually came. He uncovered his hood and spoke respectfully to the noble guard in charge. He gave the man the number of travelers, their IDs, reason for travel and more. I need to inspect your group and belongings, the guard said. Jargon nodded, and the tall, armored soldier began rummaging through the group and inspecting the space rings, giving them probing gazes. His hard gaze lingered on Liam for a brief second, but didn't see any rings on his fingers. With a dismissive look, he quickly waved his hand at the group and gestured for them to enter. Liam slightly smiled. A rank 1 magus couldn't see through his illusion at all. Jargon led Liam to the boat and the members boarded it. Over time, more and more people entered the ship and began unloading their supplies within its cabins. Liam could not rest peacefully until the ship sailed, thus waited for everyone to gather completely. Half an hour later, the ship began to move, with Jargon at the helm steering it. Slowly, it disembarked from the docking port and joined the countless other ships that headed for Alali. Looking at Ikoria, Liam heaved a sigh of relief. More than 14 years he spent in such a place, creating countless memories, but still felt no connection to. Only in the stars would he find comfort in. Chapter 170 Slow. After the ship safely began to sail, Liam found himself a room inside the ship's cabin. The blood troop members cleared up a way for him, leaving him the biggest and most spacious room to rest in. Truthfully, the organization was getting more and more useful in Liam's eyes. They knew their place and never spoke out of turn, like maids and butlers except infinitely more useful. Is this the power of influence? I can see why nobles cling to their status so much. As a lone cultivator, Liam didn't really recognize the benefits of having greater numbers. However, he still believed in increasing his own strength by himself. Relying so much on others would only make him more dependent on them. Dispelling those thoughts, Liam closed the door behind him and inspected the room. It was a cozy space lit by a single light hanging from the top, swaying left and right as the waves crashed against the ship. Besides that, there were random books laying around here and there, with a single bed facing the wall. Done with that, Liam sat cross-legged with a groan. Although he fought roughly 4 days ago, his body was still in severe pain. All his muscles ached with each movement, ringing with agony. Backlash from using his Ashura form with chaos for too long. Liam thought back to the results of the fight. Why couldn't she affect me with her mental waves? She was a rank 3 magus, wasn't she? It took a solid minute for Liam to understand why. To attack the mental sphere, one had to find it through the body and damage it from there. Mental waves had a limit of what they could pierce through. That means my body is hard enough to block out mental waves. I'm only at the 3rd rank too. Smiling, the first thing Liam did was check if his cultivation worked the same. To his relief, it did. Aura gathered around his core and nourished its insides while expanding its walls. Yet even though Liam hadn't cultivated in the months he was running, his organ naturally expanded itself. This was because Liam's centers of power were of a much higher rank. With a rank 3 body nearing the 4th, and a rank 2 sea of consciousness, Liam's body was rapidly nourishing itself to align the centers of power. A week or 2 should be enough for a breakthrough. Liam smiled. His half-Ashura form allowed for normal cultivation. How do I cultivate this pearl thingy, though? Liam wondered as his solar plexus gathered chaos. It probably doesn't require techniques. If it does, I won't be able to do anything with it for a while. I'll have to experiment with it later. I can't use my chaos here. Training with the psionic rune was the same. Just to be safe, Liam entered his sea of consciousness. There were no major differences, but his mental energy was a bit darker than usual, a tinge of red mixed with the black. Liam grimaced. This is why I blacked out. The transformation was bound to have an effect on my mind. After practicing a bit with his mental energy, Liam realized the issue was deep-rooted. He couldn't get it to change by simply removing it. It was a part of him now. Liam sighed. A problem for another time. What about my blood? Liam began willing out his crimson, forming a bent dagger in his hand that crystallized shortly after. Unlike in his Ashura form, where it was pure white, his blood was back to normal, albeit somewhat brighter than usual. Did its purity go up? Using the dagger, Liam formed a cut on his arm. It pierced the skin and dug into the flesh, drawing blood. It did. It's probably an upper-tier rank 1 item on its own. Incredible physical prowess, an entirely unique and destructive element, paired with higher blood purity than his own species. The loss of reproductive capabilities and bestial nature was a small sacrifice for someone like Liam. Not to mention, he had a sea of consciousness and a core too. While humans had 3 centers of power, Liam had 4. He was in another realm of cultivation. Even thinking about his progress made his body tremble from excitement. Ashuras were too strong. Liam was too strong. It begged the question, how come the opposition wasn't suppressing him as of this moment? As if I can find the answer to that. Maybe I'm just too weak as of now, there's still time for everything to go wrong. Leaving that for now, Liam shut his eyes and got to work. He took out any pills in the rings he looted which would strengthen his absorption of aura. Among those there were pills that were specific to a user's element, which Liam couldn't really use. There were tempering methods, cultivation techniques, aura stones and even psionic runes in the 1st and 2nd rank. Maybe I should spread these to the blood troop. Most of them only have rank 2 bodies and lack cultivation techniques. They don't have many magi either. He would hold off on that for the moment. A hungry dog would come back for more, and his trust in the organization wasn't solidified yet. Sitting cross-legged and closing his eyes, Liam began cultivating. /////. 2 weeks passed. Liam consumed all the usable pills for both his body and core. Despite that, his previous estimation of a week for a breakthrough was off the mark, even though he used pills to speed up his progress. A realization made him slightly grimace, but in truth, it was a reasonable penalty. Liam's cultivation progress was slowed. Much slower than the norm. Liam thought it had something to do with how rigid and powerful his body was, making it difficult for his core to expand, but it was the same with his mental sphere. So much for lack of suppression. I just had to jinx it, didn't I? Though, it generally made sense. Liam had 4 centers of power, and alignment of them would take longer because of that exact reason. Doing his best not to lament, Liam smiled broadly as he inspected his rank 2 core. Chapter 171 Advancement. Breaking through to the 2nd rank of the core didn't take much effort from his side. In the span of 5 minutes, Liam's core churned with high amounts of world essence as it slowly shrank in size, compressing the solid-state aura. The process required his constant focus and care, often to push back the walls of his core using his mental energy so it wouldn't collapse. His abdomen burned and chilled at the same time, but he was accustomed to those feelings. As it slowly condensed, Liam felt like his core would explode. To his relief, it didn't. Instead, the solid-state aura began to melt due to the pressure it faced. From solid it changed to liquid, and from liquid to gaseous. It was back to the starting point. However, the quality of gaseous aura inside his core was brilliantly pure and dense. It easily trumped his rank 1 solid stage. His new core walls were sturdier and thicker, even though it was barely the size of a pinhead, and naturally absorbed gaseous aura that vitalized Liam's body. My aura reserves doubled. Without a second of delay, he took out his shadow fire cultivation technique and memorized it for later. When his core had filled up to a decent amount, Liam stopped absorbing aura and prepared to test his darkness. Fuff. At once, his hand burst into dark flames that surged around his palm. They were pure black, letting no light pass through or escape. Liam's control over his element was much more precise. He willed it again, and darkness exploded from his entire body, corroding the wooden planks he stood on and the ceiling above his head. Liam snuffed out the darkness before he accidentally wrecked the ship. He couldn't help but let out an excited chuckle for the future. Forging should be much easier too. I can purify and cleanse magical beast parts without sacrificing their natural strength and endurance. Realizing he didn't have any of his own blades remaining, that's exactly what Liam did. He took out a preserved wolf-type magical beast from his ring and began forging away. As he expected, he could easily shape the bones, teeth and nails without much difficulty. In fact, he made both a katana and wakizashi at once, then absorbed the beast will. Liam expected there to be a drastic effect when the shadow panther formed in his mental sphere, but thankfully, there wasn't anything alarming. It was just a bit more vicious and enraged than normal. Liam's goal was to find out what tier his blades were on their own. Once settled in Alali, he could try his hand at selling weapons and armor for steady income, even without the beast will imbued. Defeating the wolf that ravaged his mental sphere walls, Liam quickly padded it with mental energy and imbued the beast will within the blades. Examining his blades, Liam pursed his lips. Unfortunately, his expectations were too high. The elegant shortsword was close to the upper tier, due to being smaller and easier to imbue with the beast will, and the katana was at the low end of the middle tier. If I let the beast will cook and used it on one blade at a time, it probably would have pushed past to the second rank. I should start adding meanings to it. /////. Another month passed with Liam repeatedly forging, inscribing and cultivating the entire time. He hadn't gone out from his room since, with jargon giving him brief updates on their smooth journey. His attempts to add meanings into his forgings were more complicated than he thought. Liam's experience with blood weaving couldn't be applied to primordial forging. They were different methods and functioned in different ways. One used blood, and the other used the remnants of a magical beast. Liam was a complete newbie in that regard, incapable of making anything usable, but he was quickly learning from his mistakes. Blood weaving progressed much smoother. Due to Liam's blood purity going up, he could inscribe blades that neared the middle tier of rank 2. An amazing feat that was completely unthinkable for someone his age. However, actually reaching the middle tier was another hurdle Liam had a bit of difficulty with. He seemed to have reached a bottleneck. His understanding of the concepts lagged behind his ink and linking ability, which was understandable to say the least. The overall result of his seclusion gave him the freedom to practice other pieces of weaponry and armor. A beast will took whatever form was given to it. Liam tried his hand in making armor to absorb attacks with, throwing needles and knives, daggers, and more. Obviously, his experience with those items were lacking to say the least, and none went above the middle tier of the first rank. Nonetheless, they were usable, and the blood troop could use them. On the other hand, the shadow fire cultivation technique was something Liam was satisfied with. It made him feel like someone was sticking an acid-coated dagger in his abdomen each time he cultivated, but it was effective as it was painful. Concluding his forging and cultivation for the day, Liam decided to leave his room. The blood troop members around his cabin were playing cards and insulting each other when Liam exited. Their laughs died down as they fumbled and hid the cards, respectfully greeting Liam with their heads lowered. Liam's aura was chillingly cold due to the migraine he was going through, with his unkempt hair and bloodshot eyes making him look like a wild beast. With a snort that sounded more like a chuckle, Liam walked past them and entered the main deck. The blood troop members were rowdy at first, but their voices dwindled down at Liam's arrival. Did Revel torture these guys or something? Why are they so timid? Seeing his leader finally come out, Jargon left the ship's helm and came to Liam's side with a smile. Sir. You've finally come out of seclusion. I was just about to inform you. Liam raised a brow of what? Jargon's smile broadened as he pointed to the distance. The Alalian lands had come into view. Chapter 172 Beautiful. It was nighttime as the Alalian lands came to view, and it was just beautiful. All the others could see were silhouettes, but Liam zoomed in and saw the vast array of colors that lands consisted of. Towering mountains stretching into gray clouds filled his vision. They were blocky in shape and weren't sloped like normal, like square pillars connected to the skies gradually thinning out from the base. Lowering his gaze, Liam inspected the borders and docking ports that accepted the incoming ships, stretching as far as his eye could see. Scattered orbs of bright white light illuminated the space. Like pole lights, they were connected to the end of a tall, curved plant. On high towers, stern-faced, burly men wearing layered robes firmly directed the sailors on where to go. They're strong. There are even rank 3 magi among them. Hiding my appearance won't be as easy anymore. The towers were made with colorful, arched, interwoven wood, glowing with a gentle light. Any structures Liam saw erected at the border looked naturally made, as though the colorful plant life willingly decided to shelter and take care of its inhabitants. Even the waters grew clearer as the ship approached, with glowing, koi-like fish creating faint ripples beneath its surface. The naturality of Alali was truly breathtaking for any normal person. Even Liam was amazed by its beauty. Learning about it through books and interactive pictures didn't do it justice. "You've been here before?" Liam asked Jargon, who responded with a quick nod. "Once with Revel." He didn't stay for long, though. For some reason, he looked offended and angry when we returned to Ikoria. Liam hummed in thought. Nobles from Ikoria were strictly barred from entering Alali. That was part of the reason Liam chose it as his destination. After several incidents of clashing against other sects and local folks, Alali just banned any noblemen or women from coming to their country. A wise decision, Liam realized. Alali only accepted migrants and royalty, as well as any zenith-ranked cultivator they couldn't afford to offend. That said, Liam desperately needed a bath before making his first impressions. With his current state, he didn't doubt getting deported on arrival. Jargon promptly showed him a shower room and gave Liam a set of new clothes. One of Alalian custom. It was a plain inner robe, padded with a black outer robe and loose martial art pants of a similar color. "I'll go make the preparations, sir." /////. As Liam bathed, the blood troop members switched out their clothes to match with Alalian customs. The weaker ones resembled farmers and workers, while those with relatively strong centers of power wore various martial arts robes. Jargon directed the ship to the closest jetty, where an Alalian martial artist approached and gestured for them to exit. The tall, tanned, muscular middle-aged man wore black and white robes, and radiated a powerful aura. Liam had finished bathing by then. His appearance wasn't entirely switched this time, since the IDs were only required when exiting Ikoria. The martial artists themselves were the inspectors/judges that determined entry into the country. Only Liam's dark red and golden eyes were switched out with black, with minor changes in his facial features and skin. Jargon was a capable man. He was well versed in the Alalian language and made a good impression on the martial artist, dubbing himself a rich village leader that sought better living conditions and expansion of trade. Jargon even pointed to Liam and mentioned him as his son. That irked Liam for some reason, but he let it slide. The inspector looked convinced. He did a brief inspection and noted down everyone's faces, names and even ranks. Liam himself wasn't an exception. Although he heavily suppressed his aura and resembled a rank 1 magus, it still made the Alalian shoot him a strange look. Coupled with Jargon's story of investing most of the village resources on his young son, the inspector eventually gave them a pass into the country after giving them a brief rundown on how the lands operated. Be careful not to venture into unnamed territories. Some sects are not welcoming and are violent enough to kill on sight, the inspector said with a firm voice. There are areas that no sector has jurisdiction over, safe zones where duels or killings are not allowed. Most civilians live in those regions. For your own safety, don't venture too deeply into the forests or mountains. Not all spirit beasts are friendly. Spirit beasts? Is that another term for magical beast? Liam wondered. With that, the group was finally allowed entry. Well done, Liam voiced beside Jargon as the troop began unpacking their supplies and carrying them past the jetty. Thank you, my liege. I apologize for calling you my son, but it was Liam raised a hand. It's fine. Liam shifted his attention forward. The landscape was straight out of a painting. Further ahead were small hills covered with lush trees, lined with orbs of light that illuminated the packed walkways. The grass below was a million shades of red, shimmering like metal and varying in length, barley-like stalks and blossoming flowers protruding from its surface. Tents lined the vein-like walkways, where merchants wearing eccentric garments greeted the new migrants with happy faces and offered them paintings, large canvases with calligraphy on them, including wearable trinkets. There was even a river of azure water that flowed past the hills, the source of which were gushing waterfalls from the blocky mountains. Liam noticed how the aura surrounding them functioned way differently compared to the norm. It was of a purer density, and came from every nook and cranny. This place is much more complicated than I thought. Are the magical beasts different, too? Liam wondered. A soft gust of wind fluttered Liam's hair. It's beautiful, a troop member couldn't help but voice. Liam agreed. But that was that. A moment later, the group withdrew towards a more secluded side of the country entrance, where Liam had to give orders to the 2,000-some blood troop members. Chapter 173 7 Clans. Liam began with giving the troop the jades he had in his possession. Born in blood by Jargon's communication device, but only Jargon's jade was connected to Liam's. We will part here, Liam spoke to Jargon, but his words were spread from one person to the other. Split yourselves into groups and spread throughout the lands. Those who are able should join a sect. If you cannot, then settle for work and familiarize yourself with how the regions function. Once a month, report to Jargon anything of importance. Taking out several space rings from his pocket, Liam gave it to Jargon. Those should have about 250 cubic meters of space total. I've added 45,000 aura stones for you to divide amongst the groups. Reluctantly accepting them, Jargon looked concerned. The surrounding blood troop members raised their brows in shock. That was no little sum. My liege, this is too much. Won't you need them yourself? Where will you go? Liam raised a brow at Jargon's concern. Studying his mental waves, Liam realized the man was truthful in his worry. He's trustable. I don't know about the rest, but if they're all like him, then I won't have anything to worry about. Those rings aren't just for storage and money. They're filled with rank 2 and 3 techniques, spells, pills, body tempering and cultivation methods, as well as psionic runes. I've separated them into different elements for you to distribute. At his words, Jargon began sweating profusely, and the troop members had wide-eyed expressions. Jargon stuttered as he tried to find words to say, but his tongue was tied to a knot. I don't need a thank you. Grow strong and become useful. Think of it as an investment that you'll eventually pay me back with. Silence ensued. What's an investment? A scrawny member questioned, instantly suffering a silencing slap to the back of the head. If I have a need for you sometime in the future, I'll let you know. Liam shot Jargon a knowing look, who gulped and began to spread the rings among the 20 groups of people containing 100 men each. After paying their deep respects to Liam, they dispersed in random directions. Jargon lingered. There was a solemn look on his face, and he couldn't but slightly smile. Thank you, my liege. I will never forget your generosity. Taking out one last ring, Liam gave it to the man. There's a rank 4 tempering method in that ring attuned to your element, including a rank 3 cultivation method. Jargon felt his heart rate spike. The man was in luck. Only Janice had a rank 4 tempering method in her ring, and her water element matched his. Liam raised a hand to stop the man from expressing gratitude. He had no need for techniques and spells he didn't use. Although he could sell them, Liam decided to gamble a bit with Jargon. Don't disappoint me. Join the biggest sect you can and report to me once a month in secret. I have high hopes. Jargon nodded firmly. He would feel more uncomfortable if Liam didn't have a mission for him. After a few more words, Jargon repeatedly thanking him, the two parted ways, and Liam was alone again. The first thing he did was explore. Liam quietly changed his appearance and blended into the crowd of randoms. Ucladd was peaceful and serene. At least, for the time being. Liam was still in a safe zone, browsing through the items sold by the jolly merchants. He picked up a few items of his own. Simple wearables that helped him blend in, black wrappings around his hands and arms, hiding the faint etchings on his skin, and a silver, Chinese-looking hairpin to tie up his long hair in a bun. Moving forward, Liam decided to ask around. "Can you point me to the nearest sector, senior?" Liam asked a stern-faced, short, wrinkly old man sitting leisurely behind a clothing stall. Liam was familiar with the tradition of the Ucladdians. He cupped his right fist over his left palm, which was a gesture of respect. At the same time, he had to be careful not to do it the other way around, since that would apparently initiate a duel to the death. 1,000 steps from here, past the hill, is the Soaring Rain sect, the old man grumbled, scratching his goatee. "You look like an ambitious young buck, but unless you're of water, you can't join." "They're element exclusive?" The old man nodded, his dark eyes fixed to Liam's. "It's common round here. Most sects have special martial arts that they refine and pass down over the generations, and more often than not it requires a specific element. The 7 clans are the same." Liam paused for a second. "Can you tell me more about them?" Although Liam knew about the 7 clans, it was of the general kind. He quietly slid 10 aura stones across the old man's counter as he asked his question. Sighing, the old man pushed back the stones, which made Liam raise a brow. "Kid, I know your people aren't the best, but not everyone can be bribed. Be careful when doing things like that. I'll tell you about them nonetheless." Taking back the aura stones, Liam nodded firmly. "They're over at the main lands. The hotspot where all the powerful martial artists gather. Civilians are not allowed there due to its dangerous wildlife, but the men and women there are even more dangerous." Liam nodded, intrigued. "The 7 clans live there." "My knowledge of them is little, but the most powerful of them all is the Luminous Light sect. They are few in number, but all of them are of the light element." Liam raised his brows, amazed. After lingering for a second, he pursed his lips and asked casually, "Are there any darkness-exclusive sects?" Instantly, the old man's features twisted. A mix of fear, disgust and anger. "Look. If you want to go far in this country, don't ask those kinds of questions. I've said enough, hurry along." Chapter 174 History. Liam was taken aback by the man's change in demeanor. He was ushered and literally shooed away after asking his question. Now I definitely need to ask about that. Why was he so afraid? Though, with the grave looks given to him by those who heard the conversation, Liam couldn't ask the stall right next to him. "I need a map. That should help me locate the more sketchy areas of this country so I can ask the right questions." Liam set out once again, this time, muddling through the crowds and arriving at the hilltop. Once again, a beautiful scene met his eyes. From the somewhat high vantage point, Liam could see a vast night market, consisting of large, tall and loose tents with spacious walkways in between, bustling with all kinds of colors, people and sounds. Here and there, towering white wisteria trees with purple, elephant ear-like leaves protruded from the ground and illuminated the regions with soft light. Thick aura naturally oozed from those trees and spread a fragrant, relaxing aroma. Multicolored orbs of light illuminated the countless walkways that spread like snakes in every direction, continuing up and down the hills. Thankfully, there were places to stay. Spacious, natural-shaped inns made from the same wisterian wood. Changing his appearance once more, he merged with the crowd. "I should stay inside for the rest of the night and train. I'll pick up a ma. Am I being followed?" Liam cut his thoughts short as he felt a figure's hidden gaze on his back. It was there ever since his talk with the old man, but he figured it was just the crowd. Just to be sure, he went 30 steps forward, then took a right, followed by a left. He was being followed. Liam's gaze turned cold. This was a safe zone. He couldn't kill anybody without the risk of getting killed or jailed himself, assuming there were jails and not outright execution. The figure in question wasn't looking at him with any bloodlust or ill intent, and it didn't even seem like the man was a cultivator, but Liam didn't want to take any chances. As he was contemplating where to kill the figure, a hiss rang out behind him. Psst. Turning his head to the source of the voice, Liam's eyes narrowed as he sensed the man waving at him from a dark alley. Well, his grave. Approaching the alley, Liam was prepared to unsheath his blades when he realized his pursuer wasn't even a cultivator. He was a scrawny, weaselly-looking man wearing a large cloak. I heard you asking about any darkness-exclusive sects, he asked with a mischievous grin. Frowning, Liam remained silent. I can tell you about them for a price. 30 stones. With a sigh, Liam took out 30 aura stones and threw them to the man. He accepted them with a smile, greedily storing them in his pockets before turning to Liam. There is one, he whispered, anxiously checking his surroundings in case there was somebody listening. Long ago, they were exiled due to the forbidden arts they practiced. They weren't so much as a darkness-only sect, but only those with a so-called black heart could join. Leaning forward to Liam, he uttered a name. The Temple of Shadow. Liam remained pensively silent, his gaze hard. What forbidden arts? Where are they now? The weasel shook his head. I don't know, it was bad enough for them to get exiled by the 7 clans, though, so it was pretty damn forbidden. Rambling old-timers say they're still out there, planning something in secret, but it's been so long I doubt most of the new generation even cares anymore. Noticing the confused look on Liam's face, the man continued, his tone lowering in volume. See, our country has a long history with the dual empire and the imperialists. Way before my great-grandparents were born, they constantly attacked our lands and tried to take over them. With the birth of our powerhouse, we became stronger than ever and they stopped like the cowards they were. Liam wanted to ask who the powerhouse was, but the man shrugged. Locals only knew so much. Some factions split and wanted revenge, others wished for order and peace. The Temple of Shadow was the former, that's all I know. With that, the weasel pulled his cloak over his head and scurried away. Liam hummed to himself in thought. He didn't know if his best interest would be searching for an exiled clan that may or may not exist anymore. If the locals didn't find it, he sure as heck could not. Even if it did exist, there was no guarantee of them being strong enough to provide resources for Liam to cultivate, forge and train with. Though, the forbidden arts aspect certainly made him curious. Not to mention, if they were in hiding, it was all the better for Liam, if they were to accept him, of course. I should at least explore the other sects and see if they suit my needs. If I can't find anything, I'll try and look for them. Liam left the alley and looked for a map stall. Finding one, he quickly bought the biggest and most detailed map he saw, which named the regions of Alali and vaguely described the sects they belonged to. Alali wasn't nearly as vast as Ikoria was, but he was still at its front door. The main lands were more than 2 million steps away. Storing the map in his ring, Liam made his way to an inn with a changed appearance. The interior was lit by orbs of violet light, filled with laughing, flush-faced men and women having a good time. One room, please, Liam asked the plump lady wearing a martial arts robe behind the counter. She smiled and asked for 5 stones, which Liam quickly paid, receiving a glowing white token in response and directions to a room. The room itself wasn't much, but everything was made from natural wood and plants. Even the bed and light hanging from above. Liam laid out his parchments around him and began studying, cultivating, and training until morning. Chapter 175 Display. Hours passed. As Liam cultivated, he was simultaneously studying the blood arts and Revel's attempts at creating spells with blood weaving. All the while, his core was repeatedly corroding away the impurities. At the same time, he had tried to inscribe and try his hand at creating a simple spell for his darkness. His understanding of it was so weak, by his standards, that Liam felt embarrassed as he made the meanings and created the links. It was like a legally blind person attempting to describe colors. That's how difficult creating a spell really was, partially due to Liam's unorthodox method of inscribing. Liam's motivation didn't wane. Everyone had to start somewhere. Studying Revel's parchments definitely gave him an edge over others, and the blood arts weren't so difficult to understand anymore. After he concluded his cultivation session, Liam had a slight frown on his face. He was a complete rank 2 cultivator, by human standards. With a fourth center of power, his ranking system had changed, and so did his progression speed. However, Liam was sure he could easily kill any rank 2 cultivator on the same level of strength as him. And with his Ashura form? He killed Janice, a rank 3 battle professor with a rank 4 body. Though that caused him to suffer for weeks on end, and he couldn't actively train due to the backlash he suffered. Concluding his training session, Liam wore his clothes and exited when it was daytime. During the morning, the stall owners worked on resupplying their merchandise. Shouts and orders echoed around every corner, but the warm sunlight and the chirping of birds softened the atmosphere. Looking at the map in his hands, Liam scanned the regions. Most sects were separated by natural landscapes, like rivers, lakes or mountains. Some sects actually did live in mountains, and others above waterfalls. Not all sects were big. Depending on their size, they spanned from having a few hundred disciples, up to 10,000s. This also determined how much land they possessed and were given control over. For a sect to claim more land, they would have to challenge another sect for theirs. Some sectors didn't even have land. The 7 clans were different. Although their numbers weren't the highest, especially the Luminous Light sect, their disciples were all powerful experts. At the same time, they split the giant mainlands into 7 different sections, where the largest sects lived under. Although the safe zones made it seem like everything was perfect, the real Gango was dog eats dog. As Liam continued exploring, he got to discover the wildlife of Alali. Spirit beasts were indeed a different kind of magical beast. On farmlands, Liam saw truck-sized turtles that helped irrigate the crops, carrying farmers on their backs without tearing them apart. They were indeed magical beasts, only way friendlier and more docile. It was only like that in the safe zones, Liam presumed. Would forging with their parts produce a different effect? I need to exit this safe zone already. Liam missed the grip on his blades. /////. 3 days passed. Liam had finally exited from the safe zone, along with crowds of other people that did the same. Most were ambitious mercenaries planning to make it big. A regular warning sign informed the groups of the dangers ahead, but there wasn't any abrupt attack waiting in ambush. In fact, civilization bustled just as much outside the safe zones as it did inside. There were small villages erected upon lush plains, in the crevices of mountains and atop rocky cliffs. Although he had planned to enter the wilderness first thing and hunt spirit beasts, Liam held off. The Soaring Rain sect won't accept me because of my element, but they can always point me in the right direction. Between training and cultivation breaks, Liam took another 3 days to arrive at the Soaring Rain sect, following the lines of people heading there. The sector itself was a grand pavilion. Architecturally, it resembled ancient Chinese buildings, with curved tiled roofs and flying eaves. It was erected over a small area of land surrounded by gushing rivers. Azure-robed ladies at the entrance gave directions to those willing to take their sector's test. After briefly asking them, Liam found out the bare minimum requirement to join was a rank 1C of consciousness, a rank 3 body, and a rank 2 core. And of course, being attuned with water. Depending on age, they could even lower those standards and accept non-cultivators to train early on. The Soaring Rain sect is a mid-sized clan. Honestly, their system resembles a Korean politics, only they're less restrictive over resources. Depending on one's cultivation base and proficiency with the clan's unique martial art, they'd be given a specific rank within the sector. More talented disciples would be given greater resources and techniques, while those weaker off had to complete missions and assignments in order to achieve the same results. They're not bloodline-based, which is a good thing. Hard work is rewarded. "Would you like to see our martial arts, young man?" said the beautiful robed lady who explained everything to Liam. "Since you're so inquisitive," she added with a dazzling smile. Curious of their abilities, Liam nodded. With his suppressed aura, the lady didn't know Liam was of the same strength as her. The Soaring Rain disciple withdrew to the side and unsheathed her patterned blade. It was smaller than Liam's katana but longer than his short sword, while the material it was made from didn't have a metallic sheen. It glowed azure on its own, making Liam raise his brows. Is it made from a spirit beast? Before he could ask, the disciple closed her eyes, then flickered them open. With a series of lithe and delicate movements, she swung her blade through the air as though performing a dance. To Liam's surprise, mist gathered on her sword and formed tiny raindrops that radiated sharpness. With one last swing, all the raindrops tore through the air like bullets. Thunk! They smashed against a boulder and pierced through it. Chapter 176 Tester of Resolve. By then, a crowd had gathered around the woman and began cheering loudly at the display of abilities. Even Liam was amazed at the woman's martial arts. Korean martial arts were entirely different. They were simple and had basic functions even until the third rank, and none had as much power and ability as the one displayed by the lady. Liam noticed how her aura patterns fluctuated with each light swing of her blade. At the same time, she switched footing and stance constantly. Obviously, a martial arts country would have complex martial arts. It only made Liam more curious in what the 7 clans themselves specialized in. But even more so, the Temple of Shadow. How about it, lad? Will you join? I know you're hiding it, but you're pretty strong yourself. The lady clicked her blade into her scabbard and approached Liam with a smile. Liam cupped his fist. Thank you, senior, but I am not of the water element. Besides, I am much too lacking with the blade, and the movements you have displayed are too delicate for my 2 hands. Regretful, the woman sighed. Before Liam could shamelessly ask more questions, the lady was called back inside. Liam simply moved on. Not too far out were several sects in close proximity to one another. Those were by far the weakest, as smaller clans didn't have much jurisdiction, and they were tightly packed in large areas. Another slow week passed. Moving from sector to sector and asking more questions, Liam eventually found one that caught his eye. It was the Piercing Sword sect. As the name suggested, they were a sword-focused clan that was slightly less renowned compared to the mid-sized sects, but a league above those below it. They weren't element exclusive, and it didn't matter anyway. The entrance to the sector was packed like usual. The cultivators joining were much more powerful compared to the soaring rains. As the martial artists looked towards Liam, they sneered and glared at him from a distance, confusing his youth for weakness. Liam didn't feel the need to respond or even acknowledge their existence. He felt superior in every way to them, and his pride as a half-Ashura wasn't hurt due to how weak they were. Eventually, his turn came. Piercing Sword sect colors were white and silver. Their buildings and robes matched it perfectly, and their disciples took care of their appearance. The instructor in charge of inspecting the tryouts nodded in approval when seeing Liam. Young, dual-wielder, and already has a powerful cultivation base. You are a rank 1 magus, correct? Liam nodded with cupped fists, a bit surprised the man guessed his choice of weapons. Come with me, the horse-faced instructor said with a smile, leading Liam in. Meanwhile, Liam assessed the surroundings for any formations or inscriptions, and found the entire sector grounds riddled with them. There was another long line of people waiting to get inside the building itself, but the man skipped past them and entered with Liam at his side. Within the ornately decorated rooms, 10 men and women sat side by side on the carpeted floor with an older, tanned instructor in front. Coiled around his arm was a horned viper with iridescent scales. It poked its head through the man's shoulder, softly hissing with a white forked tongue. On its head, there was a black slit resembling a diamond. The horse-faced instructor gestured for Liam to sit down, which he quickly did. The 2 instructors exchanged a knowing look, before the man that led Liam in left and slid the door closed. Liam's eyes were fixed to the snake. It was merely rank 1, but there was something strange about it he couldn't put his finger on. Our Piercing Sword sect doesn't have any restrictive requirements. However, our clan's martial arts are quite demanding, requiring a determined and resolved user. On his words, the snake on his arm dropped to the floor and began slithering over to the nearest tryout. This is a tester of resolve, a rank 1 spirit beast. It measures a cultivator's determination, resolve and character. Don't be afraid. It won't bite unless provoked or threatened. Place your palm on its head, and it will do the rest. The burly, middle-aged man it slithered to nearly slapped it away, but the instructor's firm words stopped him. Hissing, the viper raised its head, and the man put his palm on it. Slowly, the snake automatically began absorbing the man's aura. As it did so, the iridescent scales started to change color from top to bottom, turning faintly blue, green, red and yellow with black marks in between. I'm sorry, the instructor said with a stern look. But you have low resolve and lack character. We cannot accept you. The tryout snorted derisively and stomped the floor in anger as he left. Indifferently, the snake moved to the next tryout. Liam watched with curious eyes. To think there were animals that could test a person's character. Wait. This was against him in every way. There was nobody that was worse in character than Liam himself. Still, he was curious enough to linger. He wanted to know how deep his resolve and determination went. There wasn't much the sect could do against him even if it implied his wicked personality. He was there as a guest, after all. After absorbing another tryout's aura, it changed colors again. This time, the scales were a vibrant green, milk white and azure blue with no black marks. You pass. Hardworking, compassionate and headstrong. The servants will take you inside and give you our sex robes. The tanned instructor smiled as the tryout was taken into another room. One after the other, the tryouts were being tested for their compatibility to the clan. 3 more men managed to become disciples, and the rest had failed. Before long, it was Liam's turn. Putting his hand on the viper's head, the snake slowly absorbed his aura. At once, the snake's scales turned pitch black, and it lunged at Liam with a loud hiss. Chapter 177 Threat. Hiss. The instructor saw the change in the snake's behavior and attempted to stop it, but Liam already grabbed it by the neck. About to clench and turn the daring viper into mush, Liam noticed the instructor's frown. He threw it away, and the snake instantly slithered back to the dumbfounded instructor, hiding in his robe sleeve. Instantly, the room's atmosphere changed. The other tryouts yet to leave the room looked at him with frowns, while the instructor himself looked aghast. Before they could do or say anything, Liam cupped his fists. I will take my leave, senior. I am clearly not fit for your clan. As he left, the instructor had a dark look on his face. A black heart devoid of remorse, and from such a young age. That boy is a threat. .. Liam managed to leave the sect without trouble. The instructor apologized for the snake attacking him and offered him 100 aura stones for compensation, which he accepted without qualms. It was a pity, really. The piercing sword sect was ideal. Not too famous and not too weak, but Liam didn't worry too much. Liam could afford to hold off on finding a sect. He wasn't too close to his breakthroughs and had the required techniques for the moment. His sea of consciousness wouldn't advance for a long time. His body was closer than the rest, but still far. Not too long ago, he had just advanced to the second rank of the Corps. Until then, he would work on finding the Temple of Shadow. Among other things, of course. Like finding out how to advance his Chaos Pearl Thingy, he still hadn't given it a name, and forge items from spirit beasts. Giving himself some seclusion and learning how to attune the blood arts to his body was also something to think about. Speaking of, that was Liam's next goal, living in the wilderness for a few months until he could find clues as to where the Shadow of Temple was. He hadn't completely given up on finding another sect, but in truth, none really gave him the comfort of being under. They were too public, and all sects wanted to venture into the main lands at some point to expand their territories and make a name for themselves. It was a pointless desire, really, but who was Liam to judge? If anything, he agreed with the expansion of territory, taking over more land and resources from sectors. Looking at his map, Liam thought of where to go next. Past the north, there was a magical forest filled with various kinds of spirit beasts. To the east, there were blocky mountains and pillars connecting to the clouds. Waterfalls and deep canyons to the west. Here and there were small villages, but they were regular civilizations with a few martial artists as guards. Overall, Alali's center consisted of the main lands, but surrounding them were contrasting biomes and plains. Surrounding them were different quadrants of the largest sects under them. Cultivators of a stronger realm were allowed to enter those areas for a price, but Liam was in no rush to go there. However, Liam quickly noticed how past the main body of land, there were individual islands and danger zones separated by sea. Liam didn't think they were zenith-ranked danger zones, but most likely contained one or two of them. The map didn't give details to those areas, probably since it was too dangerous for normal people to venture towards. If there really is a Temple of Shadow, they wouldn't risk living in the central regions. They'd most likely live on the edges or separate islands. With a goal in mind, Liam began with making his way to the Rayo forest first, the nearest to him. Stretching across 130 kilometers, the forest was brimming with life. The trees there were giant, resembling willows with drooping, rainbow-like colors. Critters and small-sized creatures like squirrels skittered this way and that way, but Liam's expression was grave. He was being followed. Again. Was it those piercing sword guys? So much for being righteous and virtuous. They were skilled, he gave them that. They made sure to stay out the range of a rank 1 magus, not knowing Liam had sensed them ever since entering the forest. Their footsteps were also silent and they didn't even breathe, and their presence was hidden. If Liam had to guess, they were roughly the same rank as him, and were only 3 in number. Liam's eyes turned cold, but he suppressed his aura from changing. I hope they have their clan's martial arts in their rings. Acting as though he didn't notice them, Liam casually strolled through the forest and admired the scene. Eventually, he laid his back against a willow tree and closed his eyes, a peaceful expression on his face. Slowly, the piercing sword sect disciples were gradually closing the distance. They hid atop the trees surrounding Liam's resting place and patiently waited until he fell asleep. Once they were absolutely sure he was sleeping, judging by the cartoonish snoring noises he made, they exchanged knowing looks. Whoosh! At once, they erupted from their trees with their blades drawn, a gust of wind violently blowing back the leaves. Cling! Clang! Liam awoke with a nonchalant expression on his face and his blades magically drawn, instantly intercepting the 3 that attacked him. His calm expression made the 3 grimace, but they quickly realized the swords he deflected with were riddled with cracks, oozing with dangerous black smoke. Simultaneously, the 3 took a short step back before shooting forward again, their glowing white swords drilling through air as they focused on Liam's blades and weak spots. Shing! Their combined attack managed to drill through Liam's swords and body at once. However, their swords didn't meet blood, but gaseous, liquid and solid darkness. Wah! As their expressions twisted to a grimace, a sharp pain invaded the back of one of the disciples, and black needles flew towards the other 2. Chapter 178 Desperation. Just as Liam threw the needles and stuck his katana into the disciple's spine, he swiped horizontally with his short sword and formed a nasty gash on the man's neck. Shing! Boff! The umbral needles exploded into fumes, corroding the other 2 disciples' rank 3 bodies like acid. It had managed to pierce through their chest, then spread to their faces and marred them beyond recognition. After Liam's advancement, the umbral needles were at the gaseous stage of the 2nd rank. The darkness that oozed from them melted away layers of flesh with ease. They weren't dead just yet. Only one was. The disciple with the neck wound desperately attempted to scurry away and run, but corrosive chains wrapped around his face and yanked him back. With another thrust of Liam's sword, a hole formed in the man's heart, killing him. Liam shifted his attention to the other 2. They had dispelled the wisps of darkness remaining on their figures using their wind and water elements. Their robes and faces were heavily corroded, and they looked distraught, but pieces of their skin were starting to reform. To their credit, they managed to fix their bloodshot eyes at Liam and prepare their spells. 2 mental attacks were shot his way, but corrosive mind and thicken brushed them off. They fixed the grip on their swords and assumed a defensive stance. Liam took slow steps towards them with his blades lowered to his sides. Darkness tightened around his feet, then sprung him forward. Before they could even think of countering, Liam executed the first form of the Phantom's Way while activating his dark wraith body. Endless passage. Liam turned into an ethereal, thin streak, while his blades turned into wafer-like black lines. Whoosh! A soft gust of wind blew forth as Liam appeared between them. Spurt! Blood sprayed from their jugular veins like water, drenching the leaves below. They thumped lifelessly on the ground, leaking bodily liquids. I don't understand. They stick their hand into a snake's den and don't expect to be bit. Sheathing his blades, Liam moved to their corpses before anyone else arrived. He took off their rings and put them in his robe pocket, before storing their bodies and putting them into preservation containers. There's something I need to test out. It's disturbing, but if it's true, I found a way to advance my Chaos Pearl. His complexion had become slightly pale after using so many spells at once. Shadow Clone paired with the King's Eye was incredibly useful, and his usage of both had gotten better as he practiced by himself. He even gave it swords, albeit weak ones. Though, he wasn't skilled enough to manipulate the clone's face to replicate emotion, hence why it was expressionless. On the other hand, the blades Liam used were the best forged item he managed to make during his time in seclusion. After his core advancement, he was finally able to make forged items that reached the rank 2 middle tier threshold. Blood weaving only increased its sharpness and potential, but it was thanks to his primordial forging that it reached that level. Liam ventured further into the forest, eventually coming across his first spirit beast after 2 whole hours. It lived inside a hill cavity, a large cave with an arched entrance veiled by pieces of leaves and vines. It was a rank 3 bear-type spirit beast with vibrant blue and red fur, gently resting on its nozzle as it slept. Its cubs were there too, of a lower rank. It was more than 4 meters in width and height, with dangerous-looking claws and a maw bigger than Liam's chest. Studying it for a few minutes, he realized it was a fire-type spirit beast, except its aura was blue instead of a fiery orange. So they're just variants of what normal magical beasts can do. It made him curious. What about darkness beasts? Having examined it enough, Liam unsheathed his blades and burst through the entrance, hurling 5 needles at the beast's mouth, chest and limbs followed by 1 at each of its cubs. The cave instantly filled up with black smoke, but Liam purposefully didn't use most of his spells. He wanted to see the spirit beast's abilities first. Roar! Enraged and pained, the giant beast burst into blue flames, blowing away Liam's smoke with ease and coating its giant body with burning armor. The heat radiating from the beast was much hotter than normal, but didn't actually smoke. Noticing its cubs dead, the bear let out another cry, then fixed its bloodthirsty eyes to Liam, who gave it a blank look. It roared again, then charged with a flaming swipe of its claws. Liam dodged with ease, yet purposely let some of the flames singe his skin. Instantly, he realized how much hotter it was compared to regular flames, leaving a black burn mark on his semi-hardened arms. Within the next moment, the beast roared and spewed wild flames from its mouth like a dragon. Liam raised his brows in amazement as he instantly sidestepped. Are all spirit beasts like this? Liam thought. Although its abilities weren't exactly the strongest, Liam was surprised by how the properties of their element was changed. Somehow, their innate fire abilities had managed to sacrifice its destructive properties for more heat. Liam questioned how deep those abilities could go. Changing the core properties of an ability was something mortal-ranked cultivators couldn't do. Presumably, Zenith and Celestial ranks could do something like that. Even the Academy didn't provide much knowledge in those areas. Still, how a rank 3 magical beast to have that skill was something Liam was going to study. Eventually, he had enough of the beast's antics. Dodging another swipe and ducking under the beast, darkness surged around Liam's fist and compressed. Boom! The explosion made the beast recoil and blew away his flame-made armor, creating an opening for Liam to thrust his blades through and tear apart the bear from within. Eventually it lost enough blood and strength for Liam to kill it with one last slash. Chapter 179 Double-Edged Sword. After killing the spirit beasts, Liam exited the forest and made his way to a distant village. On the way there, he killed a few more spirit beasts. A pack of white wolves that had mental attacking capabilities, near-invisible snakes that blended into the surroundings, and a pack of small-sized elephants that ran faster than tigers. Although magical beasts were stronger in most aspects, spirit beasts were way more diverse. Nonetheless, all Liam could do was analyze them until he found a darkness-attuned spirit beast to forge with. Primordial forging's main ability isn't powerful on its own. It was when I was weaker and relied on my weapons, but I barely use its function anymore. Although using a magical beast's innate ability was amazing in its own right, he wasn't skilled enough yet to bring out its full potential. Not to mention, Liam had gone through an endless amount of changes since learning how to forge from Rogan. With his six-armed form, Liam really didn't imagine the need for swords. He had extreme physical prowess that could chip and shatter any weapon with ease. Unless he learned how to make special weapons similar to that level, or at least near it, Liam's usage of blades were more like a necessity for his half-assure form. After another week, Liam arrived at the village. Changing his appearance and swapping to another set of clothes, he paid a small fee at the entrance to enter. The village itself was nearly the size of the peasantry back in Ucladd, but with way better living conditions. A few buildings even sold inscribed weapons and spells. Liam found an insignificant dwelling place and bought a small room for the day. The first thing he did was make sure the place was secure enough and not spied upon. Concluding that it wasn't, Liam took out the body of the disciples he killed. He inspected the contents of their rings first, and their clan's martial arts were indeed inside. Liam took them out and put them aside for later. His gaze shifted to the dead body laying on the floor, then to his chaos pearl. If this works. Liam willed out a minute piece of his chaos and spread it towards his mouth. As the chaos passed through his body, it reacted with his muscles and transformed bits of him into a full Ashura. He felt a threshold. If passed, he would transform fully. He felt a surge of strength, but also felt like his ability to think straight and clear dimmed. Thankfully, it was still mild. A full transformation was way more drastic. As the chaos reached his mouth, Liam's teeth sharpened and grew razor-sharp. Liam semi-transformed his body. Before he could lose himself any further than he did, Liam grabbed the disciple's shoulder and ripped off a chunk, then threw it in his mouth. The taste wasn't anything new. Liam's palate had experienced a vast range of taste. From raw magical beast, to vampire nexus, to human flesh. All of them were disgusting and horrid, but for Liam, it was another Tuesday. Liam's teeth ripped through the stubborn rank 3 flesh. It had the consistency of rubber, but he made sure to reduce its size before he swallowed. As the flesh reached his stomach, Liam felt a change. The reason why Liam was eating another human was because cultivators had something called life force. Vampires consumed each other's life force to grow stronger. Ever since Liam gained blood manipulation abilities, he wondered how he could increase his blood purity and improve his control over it. At the same time, he wondered how his chaos pearl would expand and grow stronger. The answer was simpler than he thought. All he had to do was become a cannibal. Cultivators also had life force, and so did every other living creature. Born in blood by COVID candy. He hadn't tested out his hypothesis on magical beasts or spirit beasts just yet, but he was sure it would yield the same results. The only drawback was that Liam had to eat them shortly after their death, and with their blood and raw parts intact. A small price. As the flesh melted in Liam's stomach, he felt the life force spread and nourish his body. It wasn't enough for a drastic change to take place, but Liam continued chewing. Eventually, he ripped off the right side of the disciple's arm, then began wolfing down his flesh. As he gulped down the entire limb, Liam wasn't satisfied. He ripped off the left side and ate it right after. It still didn't sate his hunger. Liam ripped off the disciple's head with 2 of his arms and pulled out his eyes with 2 others. He threw the organs in his mouth as though they were a snack, then began gnawing away at the head. The taste had actually become quite nice as he continued to eat. Wait, 4 arms? It took Liam a full minute to realize what happened. He pulled himself out of the trance with a loud curse and swallowed what remained in his mouth. Liam quickly undid his semi-transformation before he became a full Ashura. His teeth receded and the 2 extra arms protruding from his waist withdrew into his body. When did I lose myself? Liam cursed again when he realized half the disciple's body was missing, melted away in his stomach. All that remained was a lower body that looked cruelly torn apart, organs and viscera vomiting out from what was left. Liam quickly realized he needed to stop regarding the Ashura transformation as a blessing. It was a double-edged sword, and he could easily cut himself with it. That said, his Chaos Pearl was a tiny bit more expanded, and his blood purity had also gone up by a small amount. A double-edged sword indeed. As for how he knew his Chaos Pearl grew bigger by eating other humans, it was an instinctive piece of knowledge that came with his new race. Liam erased any trace of the body being in the same room as him using his darkness, including the blood and viscera, then began running towards the edges of Alali to find the Temple of Shadow. Chapter 180 Altar. 2 weeks passed, marking the 1-month point that Liam had arrived in Alali. By then, he had traveled more than 150 kilometers of distance, with breaks of cultivation, exploration of cities, and killing/studying spirit beasts. What Liam silently added to that list was eating humans and spirit beasts fresh and raw. Of course, just because there was a small chance of him going crazy didn't stop him from purifying his blood and expanding his Chaos Pearl. And it was arduously slow, too. Especially the Chaos Pearl. It expanded an unnoticeable amount each time Liam ate a spirit beast or human flesh. His blood purity wasn't any better. Liam was careful of who he chose to eat, avoiding most of the main sects that governed the regions. Rogue martial artists were a problem in Alali. They were basically bandits that lived in the random corners of the land and formed gangs. Liam was just cleaning the streets like any good Samaritan would. The higher rank the human or beast was, the more effectively their life force added to his. Humans provided much more life force compared to mere beasts, since they had 3 centers of power instead of 2. He also paired it with absorbing their blood using his vampiric nails, but its effectiveness was far less than simply devouring flesh. Of course, Liam couldn't eat the Sea of Consciousness or the core. The former because it existed within the cultivator's mind, and the latter because the contents inside it were poisonous to anyone else but the user. If that wasn't the case, there would be mass killings of everyone attempting to tear each other's cores apart. However, it still vitalized the body to an extent. On the other hand, Liam diligently studied spirit beasts. He found out the source of their diverse and amazing abilities belonged to their cores, which directly affected their bodies. It was a chaotic mumbo-jumbo of foreign and colorful energies that somehow worked harmoniously within the core. Some beasts had exchanged their destructive abilities for more damage. Some sacrificed one of their senses to heighten another, and so on. Liam was genuinely intrigued. In theory, that shouldn't be possible. To change the core properties of their bodies, senses, and elements was something otherworldly. For example, wind could compress into a blade's form and cut just like it, but it couldn't actually solidify into one. The same thing with fire, except its burning properties couldn't be altered. Earth couldn't liquefy, but mud attacks were also used. Unless water cultivators had wind as a spare element, they couldn't harden it. Spirit beasts denied all of that. Liam's darkness was the exception to the rule, able to shift between gaseous, liquid, and solid states at whim, but the corrosive nature of it stayed the same. Even then, the states weren't constant, more like a continuous state of triple point. Not to mention, it wasn't as rigid as earth, or free-flowing as water. And it didn't burn like fire or cut like wind. Of course, he didn't apply that reasoning for the zenith and celestial realms of strength, but the beasts he was studying were still in the mortal ranks. In truth, Liam imagined that could be a way for his physical abilities of the Ashura and his mental capabilities as a human to merge together and synergize. If a beast with no sea of consciousness could alter their body's composition, why couldn't he? He knew he wasn't the only person to think that, and there were probably billions of cultivators that tried to harness the strength of spirit beasts. But he wasn't among the billion. Only, he had absolutely no idea where to begin. Somehow, it was the same problem he had with the corrupted magical beast parts back in the Corson lands. He still had the blood daggers and corrupted magical beast corpses, but he hadn't been able to synergize his blood weaving with his forgings. But now that he could manipulate blood, he would definitely revisit that topic. Once he was settled and set, of course. Until then, he made sure to note down any findings about the spirit beasts. /////. Currently, Liam was inside a large prefecture governed by the Snow Moon sect within the northern side of Alali. He wore a regular fur coat around his black martial arts robe, his hair reaching knee-length. Meanwhile, the shift in weather was a complete 180, since the snow was so heavy it cast a white blanket across the entire prefecture of the Gango. No daylight passed through the thick veils of cold mist, snow, and fog that enshrouded the region. Men with lower-ranked bodies shivered, and the northern side was known for its ruthless and frigid cold. Still, the streets were packed with fur-coated martial artists who spent their lives in such a place. The buildings within the prefecture resembled towering sects, but they served differing purposes: gambling dens, dueling arenas, brothels, and dwellings. In front, past the buildings and over a towering cliff, was a giant sector that resembled more like a marble palace. The Snow Moon sect, a mid-tier clan with powerful martial artists. From what I know, every clan has various elders, and above them, a sect leader. Liam thought over his findings as he walked through the streets. Between them are the disciples and their relative rankings. Although he wanted to ask around and see what he could buy, Liam held off and found a place to stay. Jargon will call soon. I want to know if there was any visit from an Aquarian zenith to these lands in search of me. Even commoners would know of an event that big. Liam came face to face with a small, run-down building covered top to bottom with thick snow. He did the same old dance of changing his appearance and buying a room for a single night. It was a dull journey all things considered, but Liam still enjoyed the steady growth in his strength and knowledge. Entering his room and sitting cross-legged in cultivation, his jade flickered. Liam answered it. "My liege. Are you well?" Jargon's voice was a whisper, with the sound of wind gushing past him. "I am." Liam's response was brief. But he was glad his men hadn't died straight away. Relieved and sensing Liam's choice to skip the pleasantries, Jargon began explaining. More than 1/3 of the blood troop have been accepted into sects around the region. They've been training diligently and raising their strength. The remaining 2/3 have divided themselves into working regular jobs and becoming wandering martial artists. I myself have joined the Gushing River sect, a large-sized clan west of the mainlands.